I want to call my last game, and I want it to be in my hometown. I want it to be on our shores, and I want it to be in front of friends and family. And that was the Rugby World Cup qualifier against Canada in San Diego. So having my daughter run, with me onto the field for the national anthem, played well, and it was a great victory, and very proud of the performance. And afterwards, doing a victory lap with my daughter, there's no better way of sending off a career. There's not a lot of athletes that can retire on their own terms after a long career. So it was a brilliant way to bow out. Hi, I'm Todd Clever, or Cleaver, or Clever. This is the Rugby Hive.
He's so dangerous, Freddy Krueger has nightmares about him.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Hive. I'm Dallen, Stanford, and despite my South African accent, I was fortunate enough to play rugby for the United States on the Sevens World Series.
And I'm MacDowell, a former Canadian Sevens international. Back in my playing days, I went head-to-head against Dallen in the USA.
For several years, Robin has coached international sevens for various countries, including Canada and Mexico. He's massively passionate about growing the game across the Americas through his MacDowell rugby programs at all levels. I'm currently a commentator for World Rugby, most recently broadcasting the Rugby World Cup in Japan, as well as the amazing Sevens World Series.
More than a decade later, we are teaming up to bring you insights from legendary players and coaches from around the world.
All legends have a story. The Rugby Hive podcast is here to share it.
Welcome to the Hive.
Oh, he's more dangerous than climate change.
Hello and welcome to episode 24, our final episode for the year 2020, one that seemed to never end. But the positive to come out of this, of course, was the founding of the Rugby Hive podcast in the early part of the year. We smashed 24 episodes and we've learned enough to get the podcast edited and off the ground. Not bad for a couple of cardos who prefer to coach and talk about rugby for a living. And we've had so many unbelievable guests in season one, including Brian Abana, Nolly Waterman, Frank Bunce, Kayla Maleski, Osia Kalinisau, Mike Friday, Henry Paul, Tiana Penatani, Ari Guerrero, Ruben Samuel, Gary Gold, Gareth Rees, Joel Stransky, Mark Robertson, Chris Brown, Frankie Horn, Andy Friend, Alev Kelter, Nate Hirayama, Clark Laidlaw, Chris Wiles, Leslie McKenzie, Carl Tanana, Santiago Gomez, Cora, John Tate, Ben Gollings, and today's guest, Todd Clever, or as Robin calls him, Todd Cleaver. It's because he's carving people up like a butcher that he is. But what a thrill to hear from all these legends about their backgrounds, their journeys, and the ups and downs, and of course, the advice they give for the next generation. Well, today's personality, the Captain America of USA Rugby, the poster boy for the United States for the past 15 years out of the last 20 years. Todd, he's played all over the world, the most capped US Eagle of all time. He's done so much for the game on and off the field. And with the recent founding of the Todd Clever Foundation, he founded this after we recorded the episode, and we'll get back into that in a little bit. Todd and myself, I had a chance to play with him for 3 years on the HSBC World Rugby 7 series. An unbelievable player. Got a chance to commentate him with the US Eagles from 2015 to 2018 when he announced his retirement. And he's an amazing teammate, an amazing person. Rarely ever seen wearing a shirt though. But again, when you're absolutely ripped like Todd is, you can get away with it.
He's the man. That's all I got to say about that. He's your California poster boy. I was on the receiving end of a Todd Clever headbutt in Hong Kong in 2006 or so, and that was the last time I got near him. But he's a good man on and off the field, and he's doing great work. And he's also now the poster boy for the MLR. He's really trying to drive the game in the US. He paved the way as a player, obviously playing Super Rugby, playing in Japan, playing all over the world, and obviously one of the best players probably of all time on the global scene. And now that he's retired, he's continuing to pave the way on home soil. So yeah, it's a great episode and just a great man.
And then I also want to touch on Robin briefly about his foundation, which he just founded. He said there are two parts to it. One is the helping communities part, which is a global impact focus. And so they'll provide rugby balls, jerseys, equipment, and as well as professional coaching. And they plan to support existing camps and clinics with emphasis on the inner city programs. And then some rural outreach as well, with focusing on creating new programs. And then he has a really exciting part of it too, some scholarships for athletes who firstly can't afford to attend certain rugby camps so they can increase their skills. So that's really great. And then the second part of that is a high performance scholarship, because Todd's played, as you mentioned, all over the world. So he's looking to send players to New Zealand, South Africa, Japan, England, all places where he has carved up. And so folks can go to toddclever.com to find out more information on that. Just wonderful work that he's doing that side. And then a personal memory, of course, for Todd. We'll put their highlight on YouTube as well. Never forget playing in the Sevens World Series, and there's a US player down injured. I think it was Exact Test or somebody. He's getting medical attention right near the try line. Todd gets the ball. There's nobody in front of him, so he can run around Zach and score the try. No, he runs at Zach. Zach's hunched over, getting attention from the physio, and Todd dives over him. Oh, like a Superman dive to score the try. It's a classic Todd move and kind of, I think, sums up his way of being. He's absolutely mental, but top man.
That is unreal. I can't wait. Can't wait to see that.
So, pal, listen, any thoughts from you as we round out our season 1 of the Rugby Hive? Some highs and lows from you, my friend.
Zero lows, except for my technical skills. All the highs. I think it's been the best medicine for us personally. And, selfishly just wanting to learn from some of the best players and coaches from around the world. And hopefully that content, that's one of the positives with COVID. We've had these, we have technology to help connect us, see each other, learn and listen, and take the time and slow down. And I know for myself and for a number of my athletes and friends and family, we've done just that. So just really thankful to catch up with old friends and obviously connect with new ones. And hopefully it's, this is a springboard for 2021. We got some exciting announcements in the new year here. And I think the most exciting announcements, though, rounding out 2020 is having Karen and Remo, otherwise known as Extremo, join our team to support us.
Yeah, they've been absolutely brilliant. Huge thank you from my side as well to Karen and Remo, because we know Robin's not the tech guru, so it's good to have these legends on board as well. So time now to shuttle the gates for 2020. We appreciate all the support out there, you amazing listeners. That's you tuning in right now. We really appreciate it. A tremendous season 2 is coming up in 2021 with some fantastic sponsors and partners locked in for the ride. So for this season, we want to thank supporters of the Hive in Gilbert Rugby Canada, Brand Marinade, Focus Care Products, Rugby Coffee, Yeti, and make sure to engage with us on the socials at Rugby Hive on Twitter and Facebook, at My Rugby Hive on Insta. We wish everybody an amazing new year. Be safe, be careful, keep carving, and we'll see you in 2021. From Robin and myself, keep the change, my friends. Time now for episode 24.
Do you need anything else from me? Is there enough light? Do you need anything else?
No, you look great, pal. You look great.
Feel great.
Sadi, it is fantastic to hear and see your beautiful face. That hair has been synonymous with rugby in America and around the world for decades, my friend. So good to have you on our show.
Yeah, thank you. And it's good to have the hair flowing, a little wet from the swimming pool, in full isolation and trying to make the most of it.
Yes, tell us what's been going on. You've got your daughter Hadley running around there. You guys are doing push-up competitions, or should I say you're doing the push-ups, she's just jumping on your back.
Yeah, staying active. Gyms are closed, but healthy living is what I'm all about. So teaching her all the yoga, meditation, workouts, having her run around the house and yard and stuff, and switching the environment around. So I have a place in San Diego and a place just outside of Palm Springs. So just really, kind of bounce between the beach and the desert, golf and surf. So and squeezing a lot of family time.
Oh, speaking of your family, I've been fortunate enough to be at quite a lot of your internationals over the last few years where you were playing, and I always would see your mom and dad there, Robin and Harry. Can you tell us a bit about their role in your career?
Yeah, they play a huge role, throughout my career, and being so supportive, and just as being a father myself, it's you take some lessons and learnings and the do's and don'ts, but for them being so supportive, that's the biggest chapter that I want to show my kids that I want to do. And they've traveled all around the globe watching me play, from all-star teams to under-19 national team to World Cups. So them being so supportive, definitely added some more fuel to the fire, and burning desire to keep making the teams, but also to keep performing and making them proud.
They're a very, very special bunch. They're clevers. Now, listen, I met you for the first time. I'd obviously seen you on the posters for US Rugby and things like that. It was about 2007, a training camp for the Seven Side in San Diego. And what impressed me so much about you when I first met you was how friendly you were, how approachable you were. You had played, internationally, but here we were, a lot of us, first time, into an international camp, and you were so willing to help out. I'll never forget, it was during one of Al Caravelli's fitness tests. It was about 8 hours into the Joel. We were doing everything we could to stay alive. And, you then, of course, were a full-time professional athlete. A lot of us had day jobs and things like that, but it was like the last few minutes of the session, and it was about 10 100-meter sprints, and you came to me and you're like, cool, let's do it together. And I just felt your energy, and I was able to get through it because of your help. And that ended up, I think in my head I was like, if I can stay with Todd all this distance, I'm definitely make the team, and it all went good from there, my friend. So go back in your career, you played all over New Zealand, South Africa, England, Japan, USA. What attributes do you think make a very good teammate?
Got capped when I was 19, 20 years old for US, been around the team. So being the youngest guy, and having a long 15-year career internationally. So playing with, some obviously older guys, established guys, fully professional, and having that sort of knowledge and see the future and who I wanted to be, and doing my research and studies of, what kind of athlete I wanted to be. My whole thing is to lead by example, not necessarily words or talking through it. Is if you can just be a good teammate, do it for the guys, and guys will do it with you, and just kind of feed off that energy. So I definitely remember those fitness tests with Al and pre-seasons to when games get tough in the last 10 minutes. Is how you want to be remembered, is not by the words, but by your actions.
Toddy, I remember when I first met you, and you probably don't remember, but it was in LA. We had just landed from Wellington, and I don't know if you guys got in a day early or what, but you were on the Canada van, driving back from the airport to the hotel, and we pull out of the airport, and the boys are giving it to you, and you're giving it back, and we were all having a good chat, and we pull out of the airport, I remember, and there's like one billboard. The second you see the light out of the car park, and it's Todd Nation. So the boys are just giving it to you. You're just loving it, and no ego. And then we go down the highway a little further, and we see another one and another one and another one. And that was my first impression of you. Is just you were just class and just down to earth, just a general beauty. So just seeing you progress through your rugby career in 7s and 15s, everybody's got great things to say about you. So that's a testament to you, and learn a bit about your folks, how you were raised. So let's go back to your younger days. What sports did you grow up as a young man? What sports did you get into, more traditional American sports?
First, I do remember that, coming out of that LAX and being in one of the biggest cities in the world, and having your face on the billboards and things like that. And again, it's one of those things that you could, I have it in memory, but it's just kind of take it in stride, and don't let those go to your head, and don't change for anybody. And, if it's lifelong friends or people, it's all about having that sort of respect and knowing that sort of, if you're on a billboard, you're doing something right, but you're also going to have a target on your chest for it. So, no, I do appreciate those words. You growing up, in Northern California, having one older brother who got me into the sport, playing, soccer all through youth, a little bit of baseball, swimming, all-American, well-rounded, neighborhood and everything. So, I kind of just dabbled in everything, and rugby, I started playing when I was 15 years old, following my brother's footsteps. And, just kind of at an earlier age, just saw the opportunity to see the world. And that was one of my passions, is to travel the world and live different cultures and eat different foods and go on tour. And that's what I really fell in love with. And then found out I could, the better I got with rugby, the more teams I got invited in. So started traveling, with all-star teams and select sides and ultimately USA Under-19 team. And that's when I got introduced to professionalism, watching Tri Nations and Super Rugby, and put all my eggs in one basket to fulfill that dream.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and obviously we're going to have a lot of North American content on here as far as the Rugby Hive's concerned, but we're going to have a global audience. So just trying to get the global world to understand the North American athlete. And I've shared it on a few different episodes, but I grew up playing hockey, baseball, everything very North American. And a lot of us Canadian guys, we always hit very high when we're learning how to tackle. We go very high, and if you're my size going into Todd Cleaver, that doesn't work out so well. But in hockey, it's shoulder to shoulder, right? Like standing tall, skating down the ice. So that was a big transition for me when I was making the switch. So if you could go back to 10-year-old Todd, or the Todd that first put on the cleats and the short shorts and the long socks, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, now that there's pathways to the national team, or pathways to go overseas or anything else, when I was starting, my whole thing is all about balance and enjoyment. And I don't think I would have changed much, to be honest. I set my goals and set some pretty high standard goals, and was able to reach them, which was the best thing about writing things down is checking them off, and short-term and long-term goals, and doing it. So I got in the sport for enjoyment and for traveling, and I was able to do that. I was able to make a good living doing that, playing 13, 14 years professional overseas. So I got to experience different cultures, different leagues, and have friends from all over. So I mean, the biggest thing is enjoy it, follow your passions, and write down those goals, and don't let anyone, you can keep them to yourself. So if you're shy about it, but write down those goals, because that makes it real. And whenever you're able to tick off a box that you're able to do, it's no better feeling. And from myself, of making the national team, to playing Super Rugby, to going to World Cups, those were all goals. And some of them were 5 years in the making. And whenever I was able to experience it was great to actually tick off those boxes.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in here on something that Robin just said, because quite a few Canadians, I remember commentating actually one USA-Canada game, they would call you your name slightly differently. Now, I was being told your name is Todd Clever. They would say Todd Cleaver. Now, you've been playing around the world. You watch your game footage. Do you laugh when you hear the variation?
Yeah, and it's funny because my family and close friends, they – even at stadiums announcing or on TV, they're like, oh, they got your name wrong, or they got, and why don't you say this? And I said, I'll never correct anybody. It's, and that kind of maybe kept myself a bit grounded. It's sort of like, you never make it until, the whole world knows how to pronounce your name. It's not that hard. So, and I never correct people. If they ask, I'll let them know, but, life goes on.
I think because you used to cut people up, they like the cleaver thing, you know what I mean? A meat cleaver.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. I always like to ask our guests this question. Your very first test match, you youngsters, you mentioned, I think it's 2003 against Argentina. You come off the bench. Can you give us insight into that day? What was going through your mind? Obviously, you've done really well up until that point, but this is your first big international break.
My first camp with the U.S. national team was in 2002, and that was going into for World Cup qualifiers and being part of it. And I was right when I finished on the USA Under-19 team. So I graduated from there, aged out of my eligibility, and the next camp they had for the Eagles, I got the call up, and it was, I'll never forget that call up. And it was like surreal sort of thing. And just, the idols and people that I've had, written down, and, how much they weighed, how tall they were, what their, fitness scores were, all those sort of things. It's like, shit, I'm with the big boys now, and that's it. So I took it in stride and went to camps, and it was a long, being part of several camps before getting a cap. And then once I got my first cap, in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, playing against, Argentina, the Pumas was incredible experience. And I remember the first game, on game day, wake up and it was lax, and I was relaxed and had a bit of nerves, but, kind of fake it till you make it. And, I think a couple of the older guys, enjoyed or definitely noticed it. And one of the guys that came up to me is Kevin Dallen. He was our scrum half at the time, played many years at scrum half and overseas in France and England. And he came to me and he's like, you're here for a reason, play your game. It's just any other game. And it just really calmed my nerves in doing it. And whenever, and that's exactly what it was. It's just another game. It was a little bit faster, a little bit more physical, but man, I relished it, and I'll never forget those words, those calming words. And I actually used those words that he said to me for, dozens of eagles that I saw in that place and had those nerves and whatever else. And if I saw, sort of because I was in those boots that they were in, and that making those same sort of faces, and chatted to them and definitely ease those tensions. So doing that, and yeah, it was enjoyable to get that experience at an early age, and from my first cap to my second cap, I had to wait even longer, and being part of the teams and camps, getting picked up, getting dropped, having other people, but it just made me the player who I was. Sort of nothing came easy. From my first cap in 2003, my second cap was in 2005. So I had to wait another 2 years of grinding and giving it my all. And there's highs and lows throughout any career, but that was definitely challenging mentally, physically, emotionally, definitely.
And Toddy, each team has a different ceremony and process about handing out that first cap. Could you take us into that night? Your first game is finished. What happens after that?
I still have that cap. It's framed. Accepting it after the test jersey. There was 3 others, U.S. Eagles that got capped that day as well. So being up there on stage and having a nice frosty drink and one turned into a few and turned into a few more and kind of just experiencing it, and it was it was definitely memorable. Like, I'll never forget that sort of stuff.
And Toddy, you have to wear that all night long, or what's the ruling?
Yeah, so you have 24 hours, and that kind of takes it. So you put it on, and you're in the next day on the bus. You're wearing it. It's attached to you. So I think they were a little bit more lax back then with it. To be honest, it was a tight ship that they ran. It was somewhat military, and a kid with. Maybe back then I had dreadlocks when I entered camp, and when I got my first cap, I had short hair. So they pretty much, made me do some, straightening up, tucking in my shirt, things that I wasn't really used to, that I don't do now. So maybe that's why I haven't gotten a haircut since.
I was going to say, or shaved your beard, Toddy, so I've got a chance. I was fortunate enough to commentate at least 20 or 25 of your international games over the years. One I won't forget is against Canada. You scored one of the fastest hat tricks ever recorded in World Rugby history, come from behind victory. Can you talk about the great rivalry and the battles between your neighbors to the north?
I mean, it started early for myself, being with a USA Under-19 team, playing with them for qualifiers for the World Championships, Junior World Championships, and then playing college All-Americans. They were tough. And I think some of the games were tougher on me personally with some of the USA Under-19 teams versus Canada Under-19. Those were like tough for me because I don't know. When I played against the men's team, that was one of my most nervous I've ever been, because I remember how hard they were as Under-19s. And whenever I played against them as men, it was a year later, or, a couple years later, and it was, a lot changed, and a lot of it's mentally, and it was about who surrounds you. And, actually being around guys that want to, be in that collision. And it wasn't just, one long-haired kid doing things, but no, it's a great rivalry, and it's awesome that we have MLR as well, and they have Toronto, and, hopefully they'll get another franchise that will keep building, and because that's the biggest thing, is that's what we've been missing, and I think both countries are gonna benefit from that on the world stage and be able to compete in World Cups.
Well, we certainly have a lot of respect for our neighbors to the south. Yeah, I had an opportunity to coach a North American U19 side in Dubai a few years ago, 2 years in a row, and the majority of those boys were American. And then since then, I've been fortunate enough to go do some camps and do a bit of coaching all across the U.S. And I don't know if you know, Todd, but I've been involved with the Mexican women's national team in the past too. So across Americas and the Caribbean. So for me, it's really about, seeing the U.S. catch fire, seeing you on a billboard when I was playing. For us, we thought that was positive because rugby's on the map, and for the game to grow across the Americas in this part of the world, we need America to be strong for sure. But I'll tell you, the hardest game I've ever played in 15s or 7s was 7s, Friday Night Lights in Hong Kong versus the US. And obviously Samoa is no fun to play against. New Zealand is no fun to play against. But the most physical game I was ever a part of was the Hong Kong Sevens in 06. And I think I went to hit the one ruck I ever tried to hit, and I got a whole bunch of hair in my mouth and was probably just about knocked out. But that game went right down to the wire. But physically, Canada-US on a Friday night game, and for those listeners out there, you only play, your first game in the competition is a Friday night, and you just play one game. And so it was a dream come true to get to play US Canada on a Friday night game. And that was the first time I felt that head in my head. So that was one of my toughest moments ever. But yeah, it was right down to the bone. So luckily, we snuck that one out on that occasion. Looking ahead to your test matches, what was it like the first time you got to lead the U.S. in a test match?
Scott Johnson was the coach, and he was having one-on-ones. He came in and got a good idea of how he wanted the team run, and he kind of had one-on-ones with players. And I thought I was just going in for a one-on-one meeting with him in his room. And he sat me down and talked about leadership abilities, talked about this, and asked me kind of who and why and where and everything else. And he kind of interrupted me and he said, actually, I'm thinking I want you to lead. And I'm like, and from 2002 when I joined in, it was, Dan Lau, Dave Hodges, then it was Court Schubert, then it was Mike Herkus, all these, individuals that are, great rugby players, great speakers, very buttoned up and making sure, this pedigree. And here I am, long hair and kind of, no, I turned it down and I just said, no, I don't think I'm the right guy for it. That's not my goals. And I never had that in my, list of wanting to do, lead the country or lead a team or anything else. And I told him I wasn't comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable, for interviews or jersey presentations or anything else. And I put myself out there to him, just saying how I just don't feel comfortable. And he's like, I don't want you to change. And he told me these words: I don't want you to change. Continue doing your thing. If you want to say something, the floor is always going to be yours. The guys have that respect for you. You lead by example, and that's what this team, needs going forward. And those I'll never forget that time. And I was able to lead and have a jersey presentation and speaking in front of my peers. And I was 24 years old, I think. Very nerve-wracking whenever there's 36-year-olds in the room that have been playing professional and have families and everything else. I still feel, like I'm learning off of them. And I think there was a few grudges personally from a couple guys that are older that have been in the team longer. And it wasn't my intention. My intention was to, get jobs done and lead with pride. So it was very, very cool experience after that one, and to lead the team for not just Scott, but for 4 other national coaches. I think it was like 5 coaches in total that we had. They put me as, their captain. And every time, I remember when he left, everybody came to me, all the players came to me like, what's going to happen now? And that's how it happened whenever coaches were kind of, when their contract was up or they got released or they wanted to leave, the players, came to me or the player group and everything else. And it's like, hey, everybody's gone. I don't have a position. I got to fight for a starting position. I got to fight for a position on the team. I got to fight for this. Being a captain was always the last of my, worries or wants. It's what's best for the team and how can I, do the team and the country service.
All great signs of a great captain, being a leader and leading by example and getting it done on the field, which you always did. Let's move forward to the 2007 World Cup, the Try of the Year. And you were heavily featured in that segment. And I think it's still just like mainstream. So can you walk us through that play, that sequence and how that felt?
I mean, going into the World Cup, it was such a committed group of guys through the team. I was living in New Zealand. I left university, moved to New Zealand, gave myself had myself a trial, ended up getting contracted, had another year in my contract. I got out of my contract so I can be with the U.S. team to prepare for the World Cup. So and a lot of guys quit their jobs, left their families and wives so they can, be together in the mountains, living in Boulder, living in Colorado. to, train high altitude. So the commitment was there. We just didn't have the rugby IQ or the physical, demand of international test rugby. Going into that World Cup was so awesome, and playing England opening game was massive, and I'll never forget that. That's probably one of my most sacred, hearing the national anthem in Pac Léon Stadium in France, and our last pool game was what we're getting at now is South Africa, and we had a tough pool. We had Tonga, Samoa, and England, who won the World Cup before, and eventually South Africa, our last pool, where they end up winning the whole thing. Go out there, enjoy it, leave everything we have. We're leaving the next day. We're no chance making quarterfinals, so just have a go. And that's what we did, as a whole team. And we were fighting till the end, and I think it was towards the end of the first half that happened, and we had a lot of pressure on our line, and I was out wide, and mismatched, couple faster, a couple bigger Springboks in front, and just saw a couple big skip passes, and I went for it, and took the ball, and then ran a few meters, handed off one, and passed it, and just followed in support. And I just remember the crowd. The crowd usually doesn't play a significant role whenever you're playing, but I'll never forget the roar of that crowd whenever we were making that break, and we went through, and it just kind of also stated how fast Taku and how fast Brian were, because I felt like I was running and I was in support, but they just, I was eating dust. And it was such a cool celebration, and being part of that. And it was definitely, one of the highlights, and being part of it and help starting the Try the World Cup or Try the Year was magnificent.
And Toddy, you leave out the important part. Butch James for South Africa is world renowned for not using his shoulders. Coached Owen Farrell, I think, in the tackling department. But in that movement, you hand him off to the face, and he goes flying backwards.
Yeah, again, sort of whenever you post things or when everything else, you have respect where you don't want to give it to people, but that definitely felt good, and it looked good on film as well. So I'll let other people talk about
exactly.
that.
Let's fast forward 4 years later, Rugby World Cup 2011 in New Zealand. You mentioned you were with North Harbour. You made a lot of Kiwi friends. I actually was on that trip with you as the media manager, and you and I had to do a lot of press and a lot of extra activities. For me, it was a great experience, first time being at a World Cup in a working capacity. But what was that tournament like for you? Because then you were the captain of the side. You guys had some special moments in that tournament.
Unreal to captain the team to a World Cup, and then in New Zealand, which at that time definitely thought of as my second home, of having his father figure as coaches to best friends to teammates, to all support, which was great. Another one of my favorite tournaments and games that I could definitely match was our first game against Ireland. When we played them, and that was September 11th, 2011. So a 10-year anniversary on 9/11, and that whole day was very special for the whole squad. And then a quick 3 days later, we played against Russia. We were all beaten up from a very physical Ireland test match, and we kind of licked our wounds and played Russia, got the win there, and traveled down. So they put on such a great tournament, and you can just, the passion, and why New Zealand is number one in the world, and the people get behind it and everything else. So that was a very special time.
So a lot of listeners, they always see, the highlights, right? The big moments. But can you go back? You played the longest for the US, time-wise and test match, obviously, wise, 76 caps. There have been some ups and downs you mentioned. One of them probably was Rugby World Cup 2015. Can you take us through that experience under Coach Mark Tolkien?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been an open book, about it, and always wanted what's best for the team. So whenever things went south with our relationship, and we've worked together for a long time, we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and I felt it was the team and the leadership and the coaching was changing, and their thought process was changing with personnel and how they go into a game, going into a World Cup, and going into a lot of things, I felt as though we were taking steps back and not being professional and everything else. And, for myself, having an opportunity to, like mentioned, grow the sport on and off the field. And, I had an opportunity for ESPN magazine and I did a shoot, and coaches didn't really approve of that or the interview that I did, which was, stating, my thoughts and everything. And, they decided it was best for us to, or best for the team to, not select me and drop me. And I thought it was very unfair. And I voiced my opinion, behind closed doors to the board, to our CEO at the time, and wanted to look into it as an investigation, because I thought there was some foul play, which they never did, unfortunately. And I felt as though there was a strong case. And then behind closed doors, the lawyers wanted to, talk and sue, and that's not what I know that's not best for rugby. So I'm going to keep quiet, let it take its course. Unfortunately, USA didn't have a good showing at the World Cup at all, and felt as though that rugby kind of took a step backwards.
Yeah, Toddy, you would come back after that as well. I recall the 2019 Rugby World Cup qualifier, San Diego, probably one of the best displays I've seen in a long time for the US. You led the charge in that game. You beat Canada, sorry, Robin, by 50 points. And, does that rank as, I know you mentioned a couple other brilliant moments that you've had in your career. Where does that one rank amongst your 73 starts and 76 caps?
Yeah, I mean, it's every time you're playing against a rival, and you kind of know going into it. The week before, we had a home and away, and we actually tied them up in Canada, and it was a tough battle. But knowing with preparation and going into it, and again, no offense to Canada, but we were so confident going into that last game. And for me personally, and that's as a team. For me personally, after 2015, getting dropped from the team and going this, and USA Rugby came to me and said, are you retiring? We want to do something. And I said, I'm not retiring. I want to, go out on a high. And they informed me that, they're firing the coach and coaches and wanting to assess, and they had the successor coming through, and we had a conversation, and his first chat to me was, what is your objective, and what do you want to do for your rugby? And it was a great question. And I answered it honestly of, I don't need to be in a leadership role. I want to give an opportunity, and that's it. And luckily they gave me that opportunity to put on the Eagles jersey again. And I just was as nervous, just as excited as my 2003 test matches of being born again, feel as though of having this opportunity. And I was so thankful to leave everything out on the field and for the players, and wasn't captain in the first game, and it was against Argentina 15 in Houston. And after that week and a half of preparation, and after that game, the coaches sat me down, and they said, we want you to be captain. We want you to be, captain the squad. And we brought in Blaine Scully to be co-captain as well. So, captaining with Blaine was remarkable. We feed off each other. We're very different individuals, and we're very good friends. And we just do things very different, and it worked. The chemistry worked. So after that first week, they invited me back and gave me the captain's band, and that was awesome. And leading up to it, and that was 2016. So 2016 and 2017, and there was talks about for the World Cup, and how can we maintain you going through the World Cup. And I had a lot of thoughts, and where my family is, where I was physically, where I was in my headspace. And I told him I wasn't interested in going to the World Cup. I want to call my last game, and I want it to be in my hometown. I want it to be on our shores, and I want it to be in front of friends and family. And that was the Rugby World Cup qualifier against Canada in San Diego. So having my daughter run, with me onto the field for the national anthem, we played well, and it was a great victory, and very proud of the performance. And afterwards, doing a victory lap with my daughter, that there's no better way of sending off a career, especially going, knowing it would have been awesome to be in Japan, and I'm going to miss a lot, but I know what it takes for that. And I know, and you see it in a lot of elite athletes, they stay too long, or they get traded, or they just try to hang on. And what was given an opportunity for me is, how can we taper off your training load or whatever else, so you can, continue through the World Cup. And my thought for myself is, that's not the player I am. If I'm not able to lead by example, and if I'm able to do half the sessions just to be there, I don't want to be a food bill. I don't want to be a passenger. I don't want to, do anything less than someone that's hungrier than ever just to, get 5 minutes or have an opportunity to be in training camp. So that's my thought process on it. And there's not a lot of athletes that can retire on their own terms after a long career. So it was a brilliant way to bow out.
It really was very fitting.
And from a Canadian aspect, it was an impressive game to watch. You could almost find yourself supporting the better rugby side that was a little more prepared. And that was an epic game for you guys. And I was happy for you to go out like that. That's pretty special. And let's switch gears to Super Rugby, being the first American to compete in that competition. What was that experience like in Johannesburg with the Lions?
Yeah, I mean, back to, setting goals. It was I was after 2007, but I mean, take away before that. Whenever I started watching rugby on TV, I only got Tri Nations and Super Rugby. So I had my favorite team in Super Rugby, and I wanted to play in that competition. So that's why I went to New Zealand and stayed there 2 years instead of 1 year and going over to Europe. I wanted to make a Super Rugby franchise. Didn't happen in New Zealand, but after the 2007 World Cup, and I think that Try of the Year in 2007 definitely helped my cause of getting opportunities to go back in Southern Hemisphere. Went down there and, left premiership opportunities, French contracts that were worth a lot more than the Super Rugby franchise in Johannesburg, but I was able to tick off a box, and that's what I was about, is experience and knowing what I wanted and was able to do it. So yeah, I after the 2007 World Cup, we tried to set up a professional national team. That didn't last very long. Compliments to USA Rugby not getting their stuff together, but once that kind of that dream folded, I went overseas and signed with the Lions, and it was such a cool experience. I mean, it wasn't walking in and make 100 friends right away on the team. It was I had to prove myself. I'd prove myself to all the coaches. I had to prove myself to all the teammates, and as Dallen knows, the media is not the nicest or not the best in South Africa. So, I had that to deal with as well. And I remember through the preseason, the training camp, on the front page of the sports section, I had a picture of myself in Johannesburg News, and it said, "Would China import rice? Why would we import a flanker?" sort of thing. So to know how depth they were. So I was like, oh, great. This is getting kind of hairy. But, after a tough preseason with them, preseason games, playing against the Bulls and got my first taste of it, and then getting my first cap against the Cheetahs at Ellis Park, I just will always remember walking down that tunnel at Ellis Park, and just the walls talk to you, and my mental aspect of the game is very, very in depth, and I do a lot of meditation and put myself in there and knowing it and do my history. So walking down these walls and sitting in these locker rooms, knowing who sat in that chair before me, who walked down this, who walked on this ramp, going into the stadium that holds 60,000+ people. And the likes of Nelson Mandela, Francois Pino, are coming into my mind and just being like, what, this is insane. And having that opportunity to come off the bench and you make a couple big hits and get awards for the biggest tackle of the game on my debut of Super Rugby. And the guys really, that's when they started, sort of opening up to me. It wasn't definitely overnight or after a preseason run and fitness test. It was, all right, this guy's ready to lay his body on the line. He's been leading, trying to do these sort of things. And it was tough because as all speaking Afrikaans and learning all, counting to everything else. And, I love South Africa so much. I have a lot of good friends and old teammates and I'll always have a special place and I'll always visit there for the rest of my life.
And switching gears, you then went to Japan. How was that huge adventure for you?
It was tough because I spent 3 seasons in South Africa with the Lions. So 3 seasons, and I had 3 different head coaches for it. So every single year I couldn't get comfortable. And that's good. You don't want to get comfortable, but you want some sort of consistency. So the president changed, and then we have a head coach change, another head coach change. And so three coaches, and the franchise isn't where it was before, like individually and everything else. Franchises have ups and downs. So we were going through a bit of a change, and I had opportunities to leave, to go to Europe or Japan. And ultimately I wanted to come back to South Africa, and they offered me a 3-year contract. South Africa did. And I had a 2-year contract at Suntory with Eddie Jones to play in top league. And financially, I weighed out a lot of options and things. And I got out of my contract. I got out of that contract. So I was going to come back for that last year, and then with another option, just because I was loving it so much and kept it very tight-lipped and everything else. But back then I didn't have like a smartphone with DocuSign or anything else. So I had to go to like Kinko's, like a paper thing. And that's how the news came out, is like the guy came and I signed the contract. I had to basically fax it over. So I faxed it over, and the guy, when I walked in there, he's like a bit nervous, but he's fine. And, or kind of Todd, and knew who I was. And it was quite, flattering and humbling. And then he opens up like, oh, you want the sending? And it was sending it to Japan. It was my Japanese contract that I signed, and it wasn't out in the media or anything else. And then he read it, or he saw it. It was obviously in Japanese. And he's like, oh, and his look of disappointment is, oh, you're leaving us? And I'm just like, keep it quiet. Like, I'm not. I was like, I haven't even told them yet. So it was pretty funny, but he definitely didn't keep it quiet before someone else let the news out, because it was in the media about a day later. So that was unfortunate. Of kind of a funny story about it, but yeah, leaving South Africa, going to Japan, and you can't really get two opposites from Johannesburg to Tokyo, and it was something else. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I signed my 2 years, did my 2 years, and liked it so much. Ended up not going back to South Africa. I stayed there for another 3 years. So in total, I was in Japan for 5 years, playing for 2 different sides. Won some trophies, and it was definitely a huge chapter, and had a lot of fun doing it.
And I'm a big fan of Eddie Jones. I've read a lot of stuff that he's put out there. And what was it like playing for him?
One of the best rugby minds, in ever, in rugby history. And if he's playing games with media, or if he's playing games with opposition coaches, or if he's playing games within the squad, he's a very tactical and precise individual. But ultimately, I think he's the best because he expects the best. There isn't a day that you come to work that you can't bring your A game. And if you're not bringing your A game, he'll let you know, and he'll call you out. Even if it's a video review. And I'll never forget, I could get into rugby, I could get into coaching, I could do that for passion things, but I don't think I could work for Eddie because of how demanding he is on individuals. I remember like one of our video analysis guy was putting something up, and his computer froze, and he just started to sweat, and you could just see that Eddie just do it. Just make it work. And it's like, it's the computer. It's not me. And it's just like, you just feel so bad. And there's a couple other funny stories that I won't mention. And one of them includes me of getting the wrath of Eddie. But, that's, it's better told over beer anyways. But he's a great guy, great coach, and very personable. I mean, once you kind of get in that click, I remember, kind of sending him a text before the World Cup final in Japan. It was England versus South Africa. Send him a quick text in the afternoon, just throwing it out there. He responds in 4 minutes. And I was like, wasn't expecting a response at all. I can't imagine how many text messages you get back. But, for him to take time out of that and I mean, the guy doesn't sleep. He's the first one there, last one out, making sure that things get done and no stones unturned.
Such a character indeed. Toddy, let's go back to the game of sevens. That's when we mentioned you and I met. My on-field Todd Clever story takes me back to the 2009 Sevens World Cup qualifier. We're in the Bahamas, beautiful setting. We're playing Canada. We're up by a few scores. We ended up winning the game, great. But during the game, I've never been involved in such a massive collision. There was a restart. And back then, you're obviously focusing on the ball. I think you were jumping. Carnage. All I remember is like waking up on the side of the field and you helped me up, and then you went across and looking to push a couple of Canadian players out the way, and I was like, at least Todd's here, he's protecting us smaller guys, which is great. I leave the field, get stitched up, come back, and only the next day when I'm watching the footage do I realize you're the guy that knocked me to the ground accidentally, and I still have a scar on the side of my face here. Verity, my missus, is like, where did you get that? I'm like, that was Todd. She goes, but didn't you play on the same team? I'm like, that's the kind of player he was. But anyway, I want to talk about sevens briefly. You got a chance to travel the world for many years doing sevens, but you're doing 15s at the same time. What was it like for you to switch and jump into different tournaments, whether it be sevens or 15s?
Yeah, again, I go back to sort of preparation and where you were and what was, you were able to do physically. And I remember it was really demanding on my body because it's such a different, game that you're playing. So if you're in a sevens tournament and you're preparing for that, your training is completely different from your 15s, and you lose 15 pounds of bulk, so you can get that more explosive and maintain that fitness. And then when you're going to 15s, then it's a bulking and you're able to just change everything. So I'll never forget the challenge it was for me physically and demanding away from it. But any opportunity I had to represent USA, if it was sevens or 15s or anything, I couldn't pass it by. And there wasn't a contract amount that would change my mind. It was, being able to represent USA, being able to do that was no better joy to me and definitely my family. So I definitely left a few dollars, with contracts, but at the end of the day, to leave the game and not have, regrets, it's pretty awesome.
Well, Todd, it was a real pleasure sharing the field with you and Takudzwa Ngwenya and a lot of your 15s guys have come back to sevens every now and again. But there's one famous story. George, the South African sevens student, was there back in the day. I remember a moment you got the ball in the wing. There was nobody in front of you. You just could walk it in to score. But there was an injured player. I think it might have been Zach Test was on the ground. And the US physio was bending down to help Zach Test. And you ran straight at her, jumped and launched yourself over, just cleared her body and scored a try. What were you thinking?
I really enjoy playing rugby. And there's no better time of playing rugby without a smile on your face, So I honestly, I wasn't thinking. I could have gone right. I could have gone left. I could have walked, like you said, but what another opportunity just to have fun and enjoy it and do something that's pretty ridiculous. So, I mean, again, I don't really have a good explanation, but, I remember telling the guys, before every test match and, at captain's run, circle in and just kind of look around and feel each other. And I just always reminded them and reminded myself is there another place you'd rather be other than this? There's no other place I'd rather be than with you guys, looking at you guys, like seeing the passion and what I see in their eyes is, soreness from the whole week, training, the excitement for tomorrow's game, all these sort of things and the emotion at this empty stadium because it's captain's run and knowing the next day it's going to be full, knowing there's going to be, our enemy across from us. And once we cross that line and that whistle blows, it's that. But there's no that preparation. And that was such a mental thing. And the day I retired, our co-captain, Blaine Scully and the team, they got me a watch. And, on the back of it was engraved, there's no better place or the and I'm just like, spot on because, look around, I smile, and if we're winning and if we're scoring tries and everything else, it's about that. You gotta stop and smell the rose. You gotta stop and enjoy the ride. And a lot of my career is so focused. I wonder if I was able to do that enough. I think my life of balance was pretty good. I know a lot of teammates and everything else are over structured and whatever else. And if that's how they operate, for me, I needed to split up that seriousness with cold beer, or with whatever else, a travel or a plane ticket to somewhere, or a cuddle or whatever it may be. So those are the sort of things that definitely I try to instill on others. And whenever the first question you guys said, what would you say to a younger yourself, is just embrace it, enjoy it, and because it's not going to last forever.
Well, the game needs entertainers, and you certainly were one of the best, so we love it.
All right, we're going to put you on the spot here a bit. Who would you say is your most respected opposing player that you ever played against in sevens specifically?
In sevens, probably mostly, playing against the greats, like, Surevi was and Ryder, just unbelievable. Mudji from New Zealand, Zar Lawrence. So, those are such opposite players than I am. I can tell you how hard it is and everything else and physical, and that was like, with like Frankie Horn or whatever that case may be, those sort of players. But we were similar. The people that were magic, that had the skills, the pace, the vision that, I didn't have. Whenever things got tough, I always know, okay, I'll just look for a body and let's win the contact. For them, they just, have a different third eye, or they're watching the film with a drone and they can just see everything. So, those players, those four players probably amaze me the most. If it's Zar, Mudji, William Ryder, or Surevi.
We had Hirayama, so another legend on here a few weeks ago, and it's interesting because he debuted at 18, so he's been playing 100 years as well, like yourself, and he talks about joy and all the same things you do. You guys, that's a beautiful thing when you play, as long as both of you have, and you're still finding joy or found joy all the way through. But he's still playing, and the first guy that he said was Ryder as well, and Surevi. So it's there's still a massive amount of respect, and Ryder was just an absolute anomaly on the field. Like, if he wanted to score, he was scoring. Nobody could touch him.
Exactly. He just made people look silly, me being one of them.
So and then how about 15s? Who would you say are a couple in 15s?
You go down the list of Super Rugby or NPC in New Zealand, internationally at World Cups or everything else. So there is a long list, and I would definitely, the hardest person and the person that I actually looked up to before and molded my game to, and ultimately became friends with, and ultimately, knowing that we're similar, would probably be Jerry Collins. Just because what a hard man he is, whatever else, he had enjoyment in his life. He was fulfilled, and he was kind, and he was, people that you want to be on his team. And when you're not on his team, you hated it for 80 minutes. But whenever that final whistle blew, he was the first one, in the locker room. So that was, I didn't know him, when I first started loving him. And then once we had a relationship and knew it, and it was unreal. So definitely, Jerry up there, and another person that I molded my game around, that I became, that I'm very good friends with, is George Smith. Seeing him around the breakdown, seeing him, do things that forwards shouldn't be doing, and trying those sort of things, and his outlook on life as well, and his lovely family. And we played against each other Super Rugby. We played each other top level, and then we ended up playing and winning championships together in Japan and overseas. We spent some time as well against each other. So he's one of those players that's just remarkable and pulls things out of his hat.
That's awesome. So just getting us up to speed here, we know you're heavily involved in Major League Rugby. Can you share with us your involvement in that league and different teams you're involved with, and where you see that going?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, Major League Rugby is at its still beginning stages, and the growth of it is so exciting. I had the opportunity when I was still playing to help advise and work with and structure a franchise in Austin. and learned so much. And, and that was from afar. And once I retired from the Premiership and internationally, I spent quite a bit of time in Austin, getting to know and working with the league and other GMs and having stake and ownership, and also playing some games for them as well. So, it was pretty remarkable to, be a co-owner, a player, advisor, sort of helping with directing and everything. So again, learned a lot. And we recently at the beginning of the year, actually sold the franchise to a new group, to a new guy, and they're taking it and they're making the right investments. And my role's changed, obviously, as it would, no longer an owner, but able to, help assist and work with relations, sponsorship, connections, liaison. All is pretty much a dream job, working with them and seeing where they're putting resources that need it. And instead of being at the, sort of working with the skin of on your teeth of chop and change, stretching a dollar, they're able to invest in sort of the community and how that is. And I see a lot of other franchises doing that as well. So the growth of it is getting massive. You're getting some really great business people involved in it, and that's going to be a massive, because there's business and then there's sports business and then there's rugby business, which all I've done. Just because you have a business degree from Harvard doesn't mean you're going to be able to save anything else. You got to be able to speak the lingo, have that passion, and have that mixture of means. So again, I'm a huge fan of it, and we just need to get behind our Rugby Players Association, make sure that the best interest is taking care of the product, taking care of the communities with grassroots pathway, and ultimately that will take care of itself of feeding into our national team so we can perform on the big stages.
Todd, a question from my side. So the last 5 years in particular have been very exciting for American rugby, with Major League Rugby starting, as you mentioned, and being very successful. The Sevens team competing with the best in the world, finished second last year and in a good spot for Olympic Games coming up. But in your opinion, when asked when will the USA Eagles in the 15-a-side game compete with the top 10 sides in the world, what would you answer?
It is a tough question, because when do you start, sort of judging it? Is it going to be at a World Cup cycle, or is it going to be this? For us, we can't really get too caught up in these cycles of 4 years. Our biggest missing piece of the puzzle was having a professional game. We have a professional tournament now, the Major League Rugby, and the first year we go out and we beat Scotland. And then we go out and we, winning game after game consistently and having these sort of things, because we have full-time professional athletes. We have good strength and conditioning. We have good nutrition. We have all the things that we didn't have before. Whenever I was playing throughout my whole career, we had teachers, we had plumbers, we had scientists, we had garbage men, we had farmers. So, I mean, you against the whole scale, it's, passionate and everything else, but they're waking up at 6 a.m, not going to the gym. They're going, driving 30 minutes, having their coffee and have their routine and try to sneak in a little gym session. So of course you're not going to be able to compete against those greats. So with the movement and where MLR is going, and hopefully we'll be able to continue with that pathway. But I think Major League Rugby, and I might be out of line saying it, but I think in 10 years' time it's going to be the best competition in the world. In saying that, I think, the U.S. national team is going to definitely benefit from that. Now there's got to be that equal, you got to have that balance of how many foreigners we're going to be able to have. If we're going to be the best competition in the world, are we going to have, 12 foreigners on each team and only 3 Americans, and a spread across, 12, 14, 16 franchises, depending on what we're going to have? That's kind of thing that we're going to have. We're going to give more, options or incentive for these Major League Rugby teams to have more Americans and be able to play with that. That's what those different committees have to make up those decisions. But ultimately, I hope that the decisions that they make are for the betterment of the totem pole. And, the totem pole is the very top, and the most powerful is World Cups, and then Olympics. And then it's going to be into professional. So MLR is a little bit below there. So if it benefits that, but also you have to look how on the commercial side, filling seats at the stadium. So, but I do believe, in 10 years time, it will be the best. And I think in hopefully 10, 12 years, we'll be able to, get beating, on consistent values of the top 10 teams.
Yeah, I agree with you in your assessment there, Todd. Let's finish off, though, on a story. South Africa, I'll never forget you told me this one. And all I'm going to say is Die Burger. If you can go into that humorous story for us, for our listeners there, please, my friend.
Oh, I mean, if we're thinking the right thing, right run, I think we were just landing in Cape Town. We were driving through, and in the middle of Cape Town, there's this big industrial building, and it's Die Burger, and I just look and this was before I was down there, and I'm just like, is that a meat factory? like is that where they're making hamburgers? Like Die? Like I just didn't understand what it was, but obviously, luckily that you were there, Dallen, to assist us with the Afrikaans of the burger. Like,
well, I will say you forgot to say though, because the Skulk Burger was a player for South Africa, and you were like, "Jeepers, they don't like him at all." This is the first thing Robin Todd says to me. He goes, "Wow, man, so you guys are mad about your rugby." I go, "Absolutely, like Springboks, African rugby." And he goes, "You don't, what happened to Skulk Burger? Why don't you like him?" And then that's when I realized, because me being, my mom's Afrikaans, so it's Die in Afrikaans is the. And so The Burger is a newspaper, is what it's called. Todd was the first person ever to bring that up. And I'm like, oh, that's a classic.
Well, I butchered that story. Die.
Todd, you've had so many memories. It's tough just to pull those out. Listen, my friend, I really want to thank you so much for coming on to our Rugby Hive podcast. It's an absolute privilege and an honor to have seen your journey through the years, and now to get you on as well has been brilliant.
Without a doubt. Thanks, Dallen. Thanks, Robin, for having me. And let's do it again soon. I love you guys. Well done. Great catching up. Good chat.
Absolutely. Long time no see, my friend. Look after yourself. Look after that push-up body of yours and your family.
Beautiful ball over the top. Yes, Seppo!
Thank you for listening, you sleek sensations.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to Rugby Hive Podcast and catch us on all the socials at Rugby Hive.
We appreciate your support. Be safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
They've taken the lunch money from South Africa.